So I'm really excited to be able to welcome Neil Holden and Craig Bentley from IgniteAI Partners, the co-founders today. And this is a special episode of the UK AI podcast where we're going to be looking at a number of the challenges that enterprises face when they're adopting AI. So let's get straight into it. I wonder whether you can answer one of the biggest questions, I think, which is around how enterprise leaders actually struggle with AI adoption. I know you've got a lot of experience in this area.
We have indeed. Yeah, thanks for having us, Tim. I mean, there's a number of factors, and probably too many to talk about all in one go today, but certainly from personal experience, so just a bit of background for me. I was on a retail board for the last 7 years in a big UK retailer prior to founding IgniteAI Partners with Craig. So first-hand experience of this really, because the AI, or the Gen AI boom anyway, certainly happened while I was in that position. And some of the factors are not that unique to AI. I think some are. I mean, not having a clear strategy for one, which you'd like to think most enterprise leaders do, but how clear it really is, and then understanding how AI can support that strategy, I think is definitely a bit of a barrier. There's certainly a fear of failure and risk aversion. I've worked in lots of retail businesses over the last 25, 26 years, and they've got varying levels of fear of failure and risk aversion. And AI is, I think it's becoming less so, but it certainly has been seen as complex, a bit futuristic in some instances, and more risk adverse leaders definitely fear that a little, and businesses overall fear that a little. Bit of cultural resistance, probably. There is the question, I think, that's probably still unanswered about how AI will impact teams' capabilities. A fear of, will it replace my job, and so on. I think the more progressive businesses and the more progressive leaders we speak to certainly now understand that augmenting workforces and almost superpowering certain areas with AI is probably a more optimistic and positive stance to take. But there is cultural resistance, and also a talent and skills gap, particularly in the early sort of stages post the Gen AI boom. Having people who understood that and were able to embrace it and really get after it in a business, I think was quite difficult. We are seeing that increase now in terms of the talent and skills and the understanding of AI in businesses, and therefore the adoption, I think, is increasing off the back of that. And other things like legacy systems, technical debt, most businesses, and again, speaking from personal experience here, already have a big problem in terms of legacy systems. They already have a headache, that they need to try and solve. Going to the board and getting investment signed off for legacy, and just to keep things ticking over is never easy. Budget cycles in businesses, having to justify that spend is difficult. So then having to justify additional spend of, now we want to invest in AI. Lots of boards and businesses are thinking, shouldn't we fix the stuff we've got first before we go ploughing into something else? And that's another factor, is I think it's deemed as there's something else now we need to consider. Budgets are tight. Everyone's busy. I've already got a huge plan. I'm already over allocated in terms of my teams and the business overall and what we're trying to achieve. Now there's something else we need to consider, and let's push that to the side for now. I mean, clearly, as a business, IgniteAI Partners helps other businesses understand these things and where the opportunities are. And the last point I just made around it's something else, it's not really factually correct, because AI isn't a separate. It's not an entity in its own. Well, not yet anyway, but that's another question. It's not something else. It's within the things that you're already doing where you really get the maximum benefit. It's like electricity. It's like a utility. More than a bit of software on its own, is how we look at it and how we advise other businesses as well. But lastly, I'll just say misaligned expectations. All of those things I think you can combine into misaligned expectations. I think some leaders expect immediate, unrealistic results, especially where AI is concerned. It's the silver bullet. It's the magic. Just flick the switch and turn it on, and everything will be great. It's really not how it works. And I think when leaders get their head around that, that's when the sort of penny drops, and hopefully where businesses like us can help them to achieve some great benefits as well.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I've heard that word a lot recently, the word magic, that people think AI is magic. But I like the way you've actually sort of kind of got into that and said it's about the expectations there, because some people do just think it's magic. But the reality is that you've got to put a lot of hard work in to changing the culture, to upskilling your workforce, to building those systems and overcoming some of those cultural resistance problems you've mentioned as well. Just sort of a question on that as well. I'd be really interested to get your thoughts on how the mindset has changed a little bit as well, because I remember 10 or 15 years ago we talk about digital transformation. That was the big buzzword back then. And a lot of what we were talking about was actually changing the mindset of the teams to be more resilient, more flexible, more adaptable, more humble. Do you think that digital transformation project ever really got completed?
No, I don't think so. No, I mean, digital transformation was such a buzzword in the industry, particularly in retail, where I came from, for many, many, many years. And consultants were kind of clamoring all over you about, we'll do the next digital transformation for you. And I think clearly businesses getting behind e-com and digital commerce was a big thing, and probably still is for some. I think AI is the next sort of revolution in terms of following .com. It's the next massive thing. I think the difference here, and I might be meandering a little bit here, but excuse me for a second. I think the difference here is AI, because of that utility aspect of AI, and it is like electricity. It's been now in everything, and it's the combination of the surrounding technologies of AI in terms of IoT, cloud. They're all very democratized technologies. So you are now encountering AI in your everyday life, whether you know it or not. You have connected fridges, connected applications at home, your mobile phone, Siri, Alexa, Google Assistant, Google Maps in your car. I think and the reason I'm mentioning that is I think the mindset is a little different now. And I spoke to the CTO of a major publishing brand not long ago, and he had implemented a lot of AI capability into his business, and he said it was one of the easiest things from an adoption point of view that he's done as a CTO, as a CIO, because of that democratization. There was always an expectation from the workforce of, when are we using AI? I'm using it at home all the time. When are we using it? We're a progressive business. What are we doing? So when the introduction came, then people were there was the pull, not a push, of that. So that the mindset and the cultural aspect of it, I think, is very different. It's also impacted by the speed of how all of this is developing. It's just so rapid. It's different to anything I've seen before from that sense.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, and I think that's one of the areas that that IgniteAI is looking at a lot, which is empowering the broader workforce and consumers with the basic AI literacy, because until we get that in place, then there's not going to be the demand, and there's not going to be the skills to kind of really have that bottom-up approach as well. So really interesting, thank you. I'd like to look into sort of like the efficiency and how we can drive that now as well. And I wondered whether you can share examples where AI has significantly improved efficiency and profitability for some of the companies you're working with.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll come in on that one too. I mean, a good example probably comes from one of the first clients that we worked with in the manufacturing sector, where AI really helped streamline a complex process of creating document packs that ship with parts. And it sounds quite simple, but it was a very convoluted and time-consuming process. So the packs contain sort of critical records like material traceability sheets, quality control, audit, test certificates, all about ensuring compliance and building confidence for customers, but also they're supplying into regulated industries like aerospace. So they need to make sure that as well as the part being absolutely right, the document pack was as well. So by implementing automation, first of all, the manual effort in completing those document packs was reduced by about 75%. Which meant that those employees were now freed up to focus on more value-added tasks, as opposed to printing off and collating documents from various systems. Then on top of that, we then helped to build an AI-powered verification, which made sure that the accuracy of those packs was also exactly where it needed to be as well. So not only improved the efficiency, but also the quality and reduced errors and delays. So as a result, manufacturers saw quite a significant increase in quality, cost savings, and also the improvement of working capital because they can ship parts faster than they didn't have goods that were sitting there waiting to be shipped. And better customer satisfaction as well, because the better quality documentation meant there's less errors, and the whole process was just a lot more smooth. So it's a really good example of how AI doesn't just drive efficiency, but it's also about business performance across lots of different dimensions of that business. Really excelled in terms of customer satisfaction.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example there, and I'm glad you made the distinction between just improving efficiency through automation, because that's a lot of what people are talking about at the moment, is like, bringing in new systems that will speed up and make this process completely automated. But actually what you focused on with the quality, that's really important as well, because that is what's going to build the trust for your customers who are getting that product or service at the end. But also it's going to build the trust for the employees and the workforce, so they will understand and be proud of what they're producing. And then, as you say, it allows them to unlock other tasks which only a human can do, or where a human can add more value.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think one of the areas there which was quite interesting is around the sort of the data quality going into all of this, because in all of those systems, and I think Neil, you mentioned this when you were sort of outlining things at the beginning, there's a lot of legacy challenges. I think data has always been one of the biggest legacy challenges, isn't it? Because I remember companies I've worked in where they've been amalgamations of different companies, and they all have a different database, all have a different CRM. Everything seems to be a complete mess. So how important is data quality to getting AI to actually work, and is it holding some companies back?
Yeah, I mean, you won't be surprised by my thoughts on this, which is yes, absolutely. I mean, automation and the use of data in automated processes, well, in any process actually, but when automation came in, it made it a bit more important. It's just absolutely critical. I think the difference now is where you introduce AI into the equation and more intelligent automation rather than traditional RPA, there are other opportunities, and I'll come to that in a sec. But I mean, I don't want to use the phrase, but maybe I'll use a politer version: rubbish in, rubbish out. That is still the case, absolutely. Data is a foundational importance for any business, and businesses I've worked in, it's been absolutely critical in businesses like Rolls-Royce. An AI, frankly, it can only be as effective as the data that it trains on and how it's powered. So poor data could equal poor decisions if you're not careful. There's also a bit of an efficiency and cost slant to it, because quality data, if you've got things in the right place, it can accelerate deployment and use of AI, instead of having to go back and retrain or kind of redevelop models. There's also a trust and adoption point. So back to the point you made before, Tim, about culture and about engagement. High quality data is going to build stakeholder confidence as well, and employee confidence in using some of the tools, and a wider business acceptance as well. There is how to phrase it really, maybe an ethical consideration as well, certainly a compliance one around poor quality data. There's the bias risk. If you're not confident on your data, or there could be bias within your data already, and then you're training AI models using that data, then clearly there's a kind of ethical risk there as well, and maybe a compliance one too. The difference now, though, and why I mentioned it previously, is that I've been working in data in business and in kind of CIO roles for many years, and data has always been so important. The difference now, though, is the technologies that are available versus the more traditional technologies that have been used before are just far more intelligent. Again, because AI is within it all, then you can kind of, if you want to get your data ready for you to use AI, you can use AI to get ready for AI, which I know sounds a bit contradictory perhaps, but is certainly the case. AI can structure unstructured data for you now. So then if you need your data structured in a certain way, you can use AI to do that, to fill some of the gaps, to use median calculations to get data into a better state. Obviously, depending on what that data is and how critical it is. I mean, Halfords, for example, in my prior role, we were using kind of ML and some predictive analytics around vehicle data, to do trends analysis and do predictive analytics of component failures in certain vehicles. And that was possible because the data capture wasn't always that accurate, but we could use AI to calculate where some of the inaccuracies and some of the missing data was, and then fill some of those blanks. Because it was okay to do that. It wasn't, we weren't trying to diagnose cancer or something like that really, really critical. We were just trying to get median points to use the data in a better way, and AI was really helpful to do that. So the game has changed things significantly, but what hasn't changed is that data is, if AI is electricity for business, then I think data is currency, and the more progressive businesses that understand that seem to be doing better.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I liked the way you sort of pointed to the role that AI tools can play in solving the data structure and the sort of like the problems which large organizations often have, which is just all those different types of data fields and records that have been built up that don't align. Famously, the NHS has got a massive problem despite having thrown like billions of pounds over the last like 30-40 years at it. And I was talking to somebody about this the other day in terms of the way in which now maybe there are AI tools that could help them structure that. But then, of course, as you've also pointed out, there's the challenges around security and privacy, which need to be taken into consideration as well. So I think that's going to be a really interesting area of development over the next couple of years. We've talked about data. That is a big challenge within this space, but thinking about some of the mistakes that you've seen companies make when they've been trying to integrate AI, can you help us share some of those mistakes so that other companies don't need to make those mistakes as well?
Yeah, sure. Well, we've touched on a couple of these already. So one of the most common mistakes is treating AI as a sort of plug and play solution rather than more of a strategic enabler. So too often, businesses will invest with the expectation of, instant results without really considering how it's going to be integrated into existing workflows or decision making. So talk about integration, that's a really important point, because otherwise you'll end up with proof of concepts that don't scale, or models that sit on the shelf without really driving any value. A number of times we've spoken to clients and they've said things like, we think we should do something with AI, but not quite sure where to start. But it's probably the wrong question. Actually, let's strip it up. What are the problems you're trying to solve in the first place? What are your priorities as a business? Is it about we need to get closer to our customers, or we need to reduce our costs, or probably both of those? But what initiatives do you have in place at the moment that's driving you there? And then look, well, how can AI kind of superpower that and really help you to achieve those goals in a better way? Another one you sort of touched on earlier as well, that's on the human side, the change management element of it is often underestimated. So it's not just a technology shift, it impacts people, processes and ways of working, but if teams aren't engaged around what you're trying to do, or they see AI as a black box rather than a tool that supports decision making, then benefits can go unrealized, teams aren't engaged, and companies can lose track of what they're actually trying to achieve. So it's really, I think, about making sure it's embedded into everyday operations, clear business objectives, proper integration, and a focus on how it enhances human expertise rather than replacing it.
Yeah, that's really great. I love that. I think you're absolutely right. Whilst it's really exciting that the AI industry is growing so much and everyone's talking about it and putting the AI badge everywhere, it also does mean that people are almost sort of seeking AI without knowing what the problem is they're trying to solve, as you've and that then leads to the challenge that it's going to disappoint, because people aren't, then they're going to turn around and say, well, we've invested in this AI thing. I've spoken to a number of larger organizations now where that's exactly the problem they've had. They've invested some significant sums in building AI tools because they've heard it's the big thing, but they haven't managed to bring the organization along with them. And those systems that are expensive have been built and they're not being used either by junior people or sometimes quite senior people because they don't see the point, they haven't been brought into it. But is that where you then get involved, Craig? If a company comes along and says, well, we want to do this, but we want to actually target these specific problems, is that where they would then reach out to IgniteAI to help them?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are a couple of the sort of problem statements that Neil and I discussed when we started the business in terms of what we wanted to help businesses with. One of them was around, where should I use AI technology? We helped to strip that question back to actually what's the business problem you're trying to solve. And the second was, we've already dipped our toe in the water, we've already invested in some technology, AI technology, but we're not sure we're getting the results that we expected. We're not quite sure why that is. So it helps demystify it a little bit as a technology, and also as in terms of how it can integrate into what they're doing already. Demystify it, help to create the right roadmap, and understand what the building blocks and foundations need to be based on that specific business for them to unlock the best from the technology. So look at the problems they're trying to solve, look at their current capabilities, obviously their technology stack, look at what the company's already invested in. Because our advice is always, leverage existing investments as much as possible. So all the companies that we talk to, their existing platform providers are trying to sell them something with AI added on to the end. We've got a new AI module, isn't it? Great. Some of the time that is the answer, but integrate it into your workflows in the right way. Other times, there might be some spot solutions that we can talk about, that some off-the-shelf products that can actually help to solve real problems really quickly. And other times we actually help to build products for clients based on their existing technology infrastructure. That's going really well because it's not lots of new platforms to learn. It's technology that they're already invested, already familiar with, and we're just helping, the AI layer in terms of helping to solve some of their problems.
Brilliant. Yeah, if I can just add, that demystifying bit, I don't think we should underestimate, because just, again, going back to my experience of recently being on a board, you have so much information coming at you already, trying to lead a business, about your market, about your performance, about your people, about your customers. You're trying to digest all of this information to understand where you need to go as a business. The amount of information that's out there about AI is just ridiculous. I mean, it's just so vast because of that entity not being an entity and more being a utility. There's just AI for finance, AI for HR, AI for this, it's just absolutely everywhere. We struggle as a business. This is our business, this is our job to understand all of this. We struggle. I can't get through all of the information that's out there to sort of stand it all. So as a business leader, if I was in my old job, I'd have no chance whatsoever, just no chance at all. So they have to rely on someone that they trust to advise them and say, don't go and buy that, frankly, because you're already paying for these platforms over here which have 80% of that capability and a bit of AI within it. What you need is to plug some of the gaps that you've got, and there's some bespoke development we can do, or we can help you to advise you which product to buy off the shelf that plugs those gaps. But without that advice, frankly, I think in my old position I'd be lost, probably making the wrong decisions.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice, because, a couple of things there. One is that there is so much happening right now that it's natural to feel overwhelmed. It's the word I hear a lot talking to businesses, that they're overwhelmed. And I think, going back to digital transformation as well, one of the things that was a big learning for me going through digital transformation the first time was it's okay to feel overwhelmed, right? If you're not feeling overwhelmed, you're not doing your job because you're not unaware of all of those things out there. But then what you need to do is you need to be curious enough to want to engage with and find those solutions. And so I like what you were then saying about how you're sort of, as a consultancy, you're providing a distillation of all those learnings that you can sort of plug into an organization to allow them to then learn from other people's mistakes, which is a powerful, much more efficient way of being able to do that. Okay, so let's sort of kind of move on and look at the future a little bit as well, because there is so much happening. And looking at the next few years, maybe 2 or 3 years, what do you think is the biggest impact that AI is going to have?
It's a very good question. Just look, I'm smiling because the rate of development and progression just exceeds my expectation all the time. There's new things that drop into my inbox, and new models and new systems that seem to be appearing on a daily basis, and some of them I read and think, really, is that actually happened? and yes, it has. So, and that's in the last 6 to 9 months. Go forward 2 years, I really don't know where we'll be. But I think the key thing to remember is technical progression and the velocity that it's progressing at does not equal human adoption, and certainly business adoption as well. Now, I do think there's a risk, a valid risk, that the gap between that is just getting bigger and will continue to get bigger. And where along that timeline, where is the sweet spot where businesses kind of close that gap a bit? And do they need to close that gap? Frankly, I don't know. And it depends which industry you look at, I suppose. I mean, we're talking more from our backgrounds of retail and consumer services. Is, we work with businesses that some have still got mainframes and AS400s, and and then you're talking about the latest and greatest bleeding edge AI models. And frankly, unless, as Craig said, unless you can find that business problem you're going to solve with that, then why would they adopt it? Why would they invest in that and take that on? So I think, when we're looking to the future, I think it's hugely exciting, a little bit scary perhaps as well. There are the obvious things, I think, around customer experience and personalization. Absolutely, hyper personalization now is a real opportunity for businesses, but it goes back to the data point we were talking about earlier. As long as you've got the information and the data that you need to do that confidently and do that well, because customers are more fickle now than ever before. Get it wrong and you'll probably lose their loyalty and have to spend a lot of time and money winning that back. Operational efficiency and automation is just going to continue in the way that it has. It's been going that direction for some time now anyway, with basic automation, then RPA, IPA, IA, and then using AI within that will continue, I'm sure. Decision support, I think businesses are trusting more now some of the ML models and predictive analytics, especially around critical business decision making. That'll definitely continue. And I do hope that sustainability and the environmental impact and how AI can really superpower that is going to become more important for businesses. But then if you look at what's going on in the US at the moment, maybe not. But I'm hoping that that's not going to continue. But for me, the more exciting prospects, and when I think about this, I get equally scared and excited at the same time. But personal AI agents and multi-agent ecosystems managing our kind of mundane tasks of our daily life, I think is becoming a reality already. And I'm using Halfers as an example, but I'm not speaking on their behalf. They haven't done this, but can you imagine your Alexa or Google Assistant speaking to you at home and saying, "Oh, by the way, Tim, your car MOT's due next week, so I've booked you in. It's on Tuesday because I know you're going to the supermarket anyway, according to your schedule. So you can just drop it off next to Sainsbury's, pop over the road, do your shop, and go back and collect your car. It's all booked already, done." Imagine that, and that's one example. Imagine that multiplied over all of your mundane kind of tasks that you have to do for your family and for your life in general. I think that's a reality. I think that will happen. Which is quite exciting. Also, it has many implications for businesses, because then businesses who are marketing and via their websites for Halfords, for example, for an MOT or any other business for one of those kind of more mundane tasks, they won't be marketing to the customer anymore. They'll be marketing to AI agents because they'll be in control. There's a bit of a scary thought.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it changes the dynamic then, doesn't it? Because actually the things which you might advertise to a human are very emotive, but the things which you might advertise to an agent might be very logical. And then
it'll be binary.
Yeah,
it'll be binary. Is it a good price? Is it within the budget that I know that you have already? Is it convenient for you? And was it rated as having a good experience? And I think if all those binary conditions exist, then it will just go ahead and do it.
Maybe we should come back and do another session looking at that in another year to see how much that has become a reality. But I think you're definitely right that we're seeing the rise of agentic, but also a whole change in marketing. You already see it within AI-powered search, and what will that look like when we have agentic search as well? I mean, maybe that's the bleeding edge. Just to start to kind of wrap things up, though, I'm keen to get some more advice from you. One last piece of advice. You've given so much advice in this session. It's been great. But what advice would you give to leaders who want to get started with AI now?
I think a couple of things. Coming back to one of the things we talked about earlier, start with a clear business challenge rather than focus on the technology itself. It should be a tool to solve a specific problem, whether it's reducing costs, improving customer experience, improving efficiency. But leaders should really think about, so where are the high impact opportunities where AI could potentially make a real measurable difference. But equally important, I think, is adopting a sort of pragmatic approach. AI is not a silver bullet, and AI success isn't about waiting for the perfect solution. Take an iterative approach, test and learn, fail quickly, but a well-scoped out pilot can deliver some really quick wins, build some internal confidence, and provide a foundation for scaling it then more broadly. So don't wait for that perfect use case. Your business leader will know their challenges already. They'll know if they've got customer service issues. They'll know if they've got cost challenges. Find one of those. And then look at where AI technology can really help them. Start small, build some engagement around it internally, prove the benefits, and then start to scale from there. But ultimately, I think AI is most effective when it's integrated properly into a structured strategy, one that aligns with business objectives, not just let's implement AI for the sake of it. So leverage proper data and then design it to scale as the organization grows. And then if you take a sort of thoughtful incremental approach, then I think those are the businesses that will see the most success in the early stages.
Brilliant. Now, I think that's really good advice to start with a small project and to just test it out. It then gets over that point I think you were making before about the risk that a lot of organizations feel when they approach this kind of thing. But if you start small, at least you can get your hands in there and kind of like try it out, and there's less risk, and then you can start to scale once you get more buy-in. Great advice. So Neil and Craig, it's been amazing to have your input here. We've covered a lot of topics there. I think there's some real pieces of value for our listeners to understand how they can get started with their journey. And I wonder whether there's kind of, what's your advice for how we can stay in touch with IgniteAI partners?
Well, yeah, if you're a leader or anyone really wanted to stay in touch, and specifically if you're wondering how to get ready for AI, the best place to start is our AI readiness assessment. So we have a very quick self-assessment that helps businesses understand whether you have the right data, leadership, capabilities, things like that in place for a successful AI journey. So if you would like to do that, you can head over to ai.igniteaipartners.com/assessment. And read that again, ai.igniteaipartners.com/assessment. It's a bit of a mouthful. Then you'll be able to enter your details, start the assessment, and then we'll reach out to you with a personalised report.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Very, very kind to share that with us. And I think that's the type of tool which would be really helpful for organizations to be able to go through and understand where to start with it. It's that often taking that first step, but we'll share that link across the bottom again, and it'll be in the comments as well. So brilliant. So thank you to Craig and thank you to Neil, the co-founders of IgniteAI Partners. That's been brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim.